Welcome to Impact Innovations, where bold ideas meet real world solutions. Join our host, Dr. Angela Gustus, as she dives in deep with thought leaders, change agents, and innovators who are making waves and moving mountains. So buckle up. Let's get ready to laugh, be inspired, and make an impact together.
Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing someone I consider amazing, Dr. Angela Gustus, CEO and founder of the CMAG Group, a company that is celebrating 10 years in business. Congratulations and welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you for being here. So let's get into it. So tell us a little bit about your journey and who is Angela Gustus?
So that's a long story. I'm 49 years old, but I'm assuming you don't want that much history. So I actually got into consulting. I started out in behavioral health and I became a supervisor pretty young in my career. And in that process, when I became a supervisor, I was basically taught some basic things like FMLA, timesheets, just some real basic things of how to be a supervisor. But I was never taught anything about being a leader. And so back in 2009, Kathy Mays and I, so CMAG is Kathy Mays, Angela Gustus. And so in 2009, Kathy and I came up with this idea. Well, we met in grad school, excuse me. And shortly thereafter, we came up with this idea of wanting to start a consulting firm. And we really wanted to focus on helping people and focusing on leadership development. And her background actually is in medical, and my background is in behavioral health. And so we both recognized that there was this issue that happens where more people, like I was not an anomaly, I guess I should say, in my experience of learning how to be a supervisor. And so we came together wanting to really start off with leadership development. And that's sort of how we started CMAG back in 2014. It took us quite a few years to get it up and running and figure out everything. And that's really what really started CMAG and so CMAG and Associates, our flagship company. And over the years, over these last 10 years, we've also added on CMAG Health Solutions and the CMAG Foundation. And it's just continued to grow from there. We've been really, really blessed. The other thing that I think is important to recognize and in alignment with the national averages, I continue to work for an outside organization for the first almost 7.5 years that CMAG was in existence. So, working for the company full time has been an achievement just in itself. And oftentimes women entrepreneurs do have to work someplace else for a long time. So it's been an interesting journey to say the least.
Okay, amazing, amazing. So you did mention Miss Kathy Mays. So I want to tell the audience, well, I would like for you to tell the audience, what does CMAG stand for?
So Kathy and I tried so many different names. It was ridiculous. I mean, like really, I wish we had written them all down and kept them just for a funny haha. But after a while, we decided to try playing around with our initials. So Kathy Mays is CM. I'm Angela Gustus, AG. And at first we had AGCM, but we realized that that just doesn't flow. AGCM, Agcom, like it just.
Agree. Yes, agree.
So we decided to do CMAG. And literally one night, Kathy's from New York. One night we were eating Chinese food, sitting in Kathy's apartment up in New York and talking through the business. This was, I guess, probably about 2013, maybe. And just all of a sudden, Kathy was like, "Ooh, CMAG." And I was like, "Oh, that's sexy. Okay, I think that's it." And literally, that's how CMAG came about. Not anything magical. It really was just playing around with our initials. And, originally we said we were gonna come up with some acronym that CMAG stood for, and we just gave up after a while. So when people ask us what does CMAG stand for, it's Kathy Mays, Angela Gustus. This is just us.
Yes, and I love it. I love the name. Okay. So going back to when you were talking about leadership, what type of leadership skills, if you were having a conversation with someone that's up and coming in the business, what type of leadership skills would you tell them they need? What kind of
Hmm.
advice would you give?
That's a great question. I'm really super passionate about leadership development. I did my master's level work on succession planning and developing leadership programs, and then I did my doctoral work on leadership and looking at entrepreneurs and women business owners who were willing to be interviewed by me for that work. And a couple of things sort of bubbled up from all of my research over the years. The first and most important thing, there's no such thing as being one type of leader. And so when I say that, like oftentimes I'll hear people say stuff like, "Oh, I'm a authentic leader, or I'm a transactional leader, or I'm a transformational leader," or all these different fun little buzzwords that are out there. And it's not that those things aren't important, but the true role of being a leader is being a chameleon at the end of the day. And so, when people talk about what kind of leader should I be or what kind of leader should an entrepreneur be and things of that sort, I say that you really should be a chameleon and you need to have a lot of different things in your toolbox. For example, one thing I often talk about is situational leadership. So, situational leadership, you're looking at very basically a person or an individual's competence and or their commitment to a specific task, which then drives how you then react to them. How whether you're more directive, whether you're more coaching, or supporting. So there's lots of different tools out there that are important. The other thing that I think is really super important is, as entrepreneurs, when we first start out, you're everything. You're janitorial, you're accounting, you're IT, you're web designer, you do everything. And you initially like there's this whole concept of like levels to the entrepreneurial journey where you start out where you just simply learn to manage yourself. And then as you grow, and have an opportunity to hire staff, then you start to learn how to manage others. And then you sort of grow from there and you start learning how to lead other managers, which is a whole nother level of leadership development. And then the sort of pinnacle of leadership development over the years, especially as an entrepreneur, is when you learn to lead other leaders. And so learning who you are at all those different stages and being honest with yourself about where your skill set is super, super important so that you can grow and be the person that your company needs. Because the person that you need to be when you're first starting out is very, very different than the person that you need to be when you're leading other leaders. So if I had to sort of sum that up, I would say recognizing that leadership really it's not just this one thing that you do. It's really way more than that and it's important for you to grow as a leader alongside with your company.
1000% agree with that. And I can say that I'm definitely being led by a great leader, and I have to say so myself. And with that being said, you also spoke on tools. Can you tell the audience how CMAG and Associates can be a tool?
Like I said in the very beginning, Kathy and I started this to be a truly set of things that would help people, whether you're an entrepreneur trying to grow, whether you are a new leader wanting to grow and needing executive coaching services, or you have a business and you're looking to scale and things of that sort. So, what Kat and I have done, really, we've tried to grow our services. I had a mentor years ago, Mr. Eric Marsh of Marsh Funeral Homes. I absolutely adore him. He's a wonderful, wonderful guy, uh, business partner of my father's. And he said to me, Angie, or he calls me Angie. He said, Angie, you're shooting with a 45. You need to learn how to shoot with a shotgun. And initially, because I wasn't into firearms at the time, I didn't understand what he was talking about. But over the years, and when he explained it to me, it makes perfect sense. And that you have to really, really focus and figure out how you can scale by having multiple people, or every time you pull that trigger, you're shooting a buckshot, which gives you 40, 40 pellets that come out rather than 45 that just shoots one round of ammunition. And so CMAG has worked over the years to create ways that we can help people in group form. So we do training. We also have multiple different consultants that work with us, and we take this collaborative approach. So all of our consultants, we all have very, very different backgrounds. Like Kathy is healthcare, I'm behavioral health. We have an accountant and a policy person and a project manager, HR, and the list goes on and on. So we have lots and lots of resources that are also tools for individuals. And in the last, I would say, 4 years that we've been in business, we've been also implementing other actual like technology tools to help some of the clients that we work with. So again, I say that word help a lot when I talk about CMAG because that's really the foundation of everything that we do.
So outside the mentor that you just spoke on, did you have any mentors or advisors in your early stages, and how did they influence you?
Oh boy, yes. So mentors, I think, are very, very important. And just in my personal journey, but then even in my research, like mentorship, all of the women that I interviewed when I was doing my doctoral work talked about the importance of having a mentor. And so I really have one mentor that was actually a supervisor to me, but also took me under her wing in a very different way. Regina, she and I worked together years and years ago, and she helped me to transition from being a case manager to being a supervisor.
Okay.
And her feedback was so important because she helped me understand that I needed to take off my case management hat because I had been a case manager for years. And as a case manager, you meet your clients where they are, you support them no matter what, and you provide them all the resources and all the things to be a great case manager. And so I was doing the same thing with my staff. And then within reason, that's great because you want to be supportive. You want to meet people where they are. You want to be helpful. But there's a different kind of accountability with a staff person than with an individual that you're supporting in the community. And so that was huge. Regina Manley, she was absolutely phenomenal and taught me a lot about how to take off the hat of a case manager and put on the hat of a supervisor, but also recognizing that some of those skills do go hand in hand and are transferable, but also recognizing the ones that aren't transferable. And so those are just two examples, but I've definitely had a lot of people who I've had informal mentoring relationships with and also formal relationships where I've really gone to them and asked people to be my mentor and to really be that person for me. And it has been paramount in helping me to grow CMAG, grow as a leader, and in other positions that I've had over the years.
So we just talked about mentorship. We talked about leadership skills in the beginning of CMAG. I want to go over into funding. What role did funding play in the early days of your business, and how did you feel about that?
So, our funding journey has been really interesting to say the least. So, when we first started CMAG, we were very purposeful in starting CMAG and Associates first because realistically, as a consulting firm, we were able to work from home and rent meeting space when we needed to meet and have a website and some business cards. And, it wasn't a heavy lift financially, to say the least.
Okay.
Um, and so that first 5 years, we continued to grow the business with that same kind of framework. We, of course, had to invest in the company, but it wasn't huge. But when we decided to move forward with a goal that we had set from the very beginning was opening up our healthcare organization, that was a whole different ball of wax. I mean, that's hiring staff, that's having a brick and mortar office with computers and phones and calculators and tape dispensers and desks. And I mean, it just all the things that you don't think about. And so when when we put together this budget of what it was going to cost to get CMAG Health up and running, Kathy and I thought very seriously about looking at equity investors and things of that sort. And it's no secret that African American women business owners have the most challenges, or some of the most challenges, in having access to capital. And Kathy and I work very hard to take care of ourselves individually, financially, and position ourselves well, and take care of our credit and all those things. Because one thing I definitely learned in business is I don't care how big your business is, they're always gonna pull your credit when you're trying to go for business credit. It is. In fact, I had an opportunity to I was at a conference and there was a panel of financial folks from everything from equity investors to loan officers, and someone in the audience asked, "So at what point as an entrepreneur do you not have to present your own credit?" And one of the guys said, "When you die." Like, I mean, just a
Wow.
straight, no laughter, nothing, and everybody was like, "Oh, okay."
Okay.
And but it's like, basically, if you're not willing to put skin in the game and you're not willing to put your credit up there, why should a bank give you money? And so when he said that, I was like, "Oh, okay, that makes sense, right?" But
Yes.
so we did all the things that we needed to do to prepare ourselves and prepare the company so that we could go after funding, and we met with an equity investor. They were looking at owning about, I think it was 25% of the organization, and I don't know, it just didn't feel good, is the best way I can say. And sometimes, yes, you make decisions in business based on financials and projections and all the wonderful, things, but sometimes your gut just tells you, this is what we were supposed to do, right?" And so Kathy and I remember, literally, we were sitting in the car outside of the office where we had met with the investors. And we were like, and Kathy just looked at me like, "Yeah, I feel like we should just do this ourselves." It was really just unfortunate, or I wouldn't say unfortunate, but it was, I don't know, it just didn't feel good. That's the best way I could say it. And so we decided to just put our own money into CMAG. And so that's exactly what we did. We invested our own funds. We did what we had to do, and we got CMAG Health up and running. And it was hard. I mean, I'm not saying it was easy. I'm not saying that's the way to do it for everyone, but it was the way that Kathy and I felt made sense for us as an organization. And I can proudly say that after 10 years in business, we are a debt-free company. I mean, we have one credit card that we use periodically for like inventory and that kind of stuff, but then we pay it off. But we really, have worked hard. Now granted, I say debt-free. However, CMAG still owes us money, you know, so defining debt, it's little things, right?
Absolutely.
But we don't owe anyone else, I will say that.
Oh, that's
CMAG may
powerful.
own, CMAG may own Kathy Mays, Angela Gustus, but we don't owe anyone else, and that has been not an easy path by a long shot. I would be telling a bold-faced lie if I didn't say there weren't times that we shed tears, we stressed, we argued some, not a lot, but I mean, it's just like, oh my gosh. I mean, it gets really, really stressful. Um, but I feel good that we're where we are and we're here debt free. I feel like that really is a powerful thing to say.
It really is. And it's a powerful thing to watch. Like every time you tell the story, I literally smile ear to ear because I actually see on firsthand things thrown your way. And both of you guys just tackle whatever's thrown you guys' way. So it's amazing to watch.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
So outside of that challenge, were there any other, I'm sure it was, any other challenging obstacles you faced of starting CMAG, and how did you overcome them?
I wouldn't say with starting CMAG, but there were definitely challenges growing CMAG. So one of the things I'll say, and just being fully transparent, when I initially stepped away from I stepped away from working for another company, and during that same time, this was 2018, like the latter part of 2018, I stepped away from working for another company full time, and I did all the things. They say that you should have 6 to 9 months of income in the bank, you should have this, you should have that. yada, yada, yada. I mean, I did it all. And at about 5 months, I was just like, oh, Jesus. Uh, and it was scary, right? And so I was very, very blessed that colleague of ours who we had done some consulting work for at the same time, and I can't say it was anything but my heavenly Father sort of aligning things, was looking for or was interested in me doing more work with the organization and being more embedded in their organization, and asked me if I would be interested in taking on a position that would be a primarily virtual position, and understanding that I was also running CMAG, and as long as I, did my hours for them and met all my deliverables, I could sort of work the schedule I needed to work. And so that came in just the nick of time because things were getting tight, to be perfectly honest. It's like you think that things are going to turn around. You have all these wonderful projections, you have all the things in line, and sometimes it just doesn't all line up. And so I was able to pay my personal bills out of another position, but it still allowed me that flexibility. And then from there, I was able to still run CMAG, but not have to worry about taking a salary. And so Kathy and I used to always joke that we were the hardest working volunteers of CMAG because I mean, we literally had staff that worked for us, some part time. I believe at that time we had maybe one or two people that were full time. And so, but I was working for the company and not making any money off of the company. And so every dollar we made, we just put it right back into the organization so that we can continue to grow. And I was able to do that until I guess it was 22, I think it was, like the very beginning of 22, that I was able to come away from working for another organization permanently. It was either the mid 21, beginning of 22, something like that, where I came away from working for that organization, and it really I was much better positioned and to be able to work for the company and be able to draw a salary off of the organization, which was huge. So, going back to your original question, starting CMAC was, I mean, it was, of course, a heavy lift. It took a lot of time management and like sort of like I talked about at the very beginning, that concept of there's levels to this and knowing how to manage myself and making sacrifices. And I was also teaching when I first started CMAG. And then shortly after, I was teaching at University of Baltimore. I teach research methodology. And and then I decided to go back and get my doctorate degree. So there was a period there where I was running a mid-sized nonprofit. I don't know how. It's like I have to laugh when I say this, but I was running a mid-sized nonprofit. I was teaching research methodology at University of Baltimore. I was getting my doctorate and I was running CMAG. I just basically didn't sleep, right? But it was a sacrifice and it was an important sacrifice for me. And I was also published my first and second book during that time as well. And so it was crazy, but I learned how to manage myself and really just stay hyper focused on what needed to happen and spent my time working on my free time working on the business. I was in the office every weekend. I was making decisions and sacrifices and not doing certain activities. And if it wasn't my family, there were some friends that I didn't see for a long time and I love them and I would check in on them. But my focus was getting this thing called CMAG up and running. So yeah, so that's I guess how that journey really maneuvered over the last 10 years.
A lot going on at once.
That's kinda how I function. That's sort of
Yes.
what I do.
I was going to ask, have you always been that person, or when CMAG came about, you changed into that person?
Um, I guess to some degree, I've always been that person, just my focus is different.
Okay.
So, my son, he's now and he hates I always talk I swear I can't get through anything without talking about him, but he's
Okay.
my favorite little person.
Yes.
And he's not little in any way, shape, or
No, it's
form.
not.
And I say that lovingly. He's 6'8", just for the public that may not know.
It's-
I'm not he's very, very tall, and he's 27 years old, so he's quite grown. But when we started CMAG, James was in high school, and I had a little bit more time. But I've always been somebody that's worn multiple hats. Like, I'm mom, I was his basketball coach for a while. I sat on different boards. Like, I've always I like staying busy. I like learning. I like constantly stretching my brain. I like engaging in things. I can't remember the last time I read a novel. Other than recently, I've been reading, my niece published her first book, which is a novel. It's the first novel I've read. Oh my gosh, I can't even remember the last novel I've read. Anything I read, it's to grow myself as a business person or professionally or in general or personally. It's always that kind of reading. And so I've just always been that person. As a kid, I really struggled with school, and I really struggled with not I was diagnosed very young as someone with cognitive learning disability, dyslexia, and ADD.
Okay.
And yes, ADD, I'm that old. It was before they added the H, right? In school, I can't say I was like this hyper motivated kid that was at the top of the class and all that. Oh, absolutely not. I was very blessed to go to a very small school, so I was able to maneuver and be okay and still graduate and have tutors and all those kinds of things. But, I didn't really become that person that, like, is always wearing multiple hats and doing this and doing that until I got much older. And I just fell in love with this concept of constant growth and helping people, and just there are 168 hours in a week. We, try to sleep about 8 of them, so that's 56. So that leaves you 112 hours. And I try to use those 12 hours as well as I can, so that I'm putting everything into everything all the time. And that's really the best way I can sort of put it.
Thank you for that. All right. So, how you would like CMAG to impact the healthcare system today?
So, one of the things that I am very, very proud of in how we function as an organization is that we're always looking at the gaps. There's this whole concept in the marketing world about blue. There's a book written, Blue Ocean, and it's this idea of, instead of just focusing and trying to just be better than other people doing the same thing, we really try to step out of the box and fill gaps, and you recognize what the challenges are in different areas. And so, with that said, back when shortly after we first started CMAG Health, I remember one of our team members came into the office and was just like, she was working. We have our license as a residential services agency, which means we can provide like in-home personal care services. And she came in the office and was talking about how she was just so concerned about the gentleman that she was working with. And, because there was hours and hours between the time that her shift ended and before anyone from his family would be able to step in and check on him and spend time with him and get him settled for the evening. And she was like, I'm really worried. Like, what if he fell, or what if something happened? What would happen? And so it got Kat and I to thinking, not everybody has the ability to pay for more staff, right? Most people, they pay for what they can afford, or their insurance pays for it, but there are state folks and whomever else that decide how many hours. So the person may get 2 hours a day, 7 hours a day, or what have you. And they really need much, much more than that. But families have to continue to work, right? And so we started thinking through and looking at, what other services could we provide that would be economical, but also bring that peace of mind? And so we started putting our pinky toe into technology, and we started what's now called Ngia Tech Home, and it's elder monitoring in general, but we also work with families with young kids who have disabilities as well, that it helps the families to be able to monitor what's happening in the house or monitor the activity of the kids and things of that sort. So we started that quite a few years ago, pretty early into CMAG Health, So I believe like around 2019, 2020, somewhere in there. Actually, no, I'm sorry, it was 2020. And we engaged with a gentleman, Spencer, who's amazing, and someone I'd worked with years and years ago, back when I was so young, and we both joke about this. I was so young, I shouldn't have been nobody's case manager. Um, but somehow somebody thought I could help somebody else figure out their life, right? Yeah, they saw something. But yeah, so Spence and I had worked together at Johns Hopkins years and years ago. And so I'd reached out to him because he's a techie, and he came into CMAG and started working with us, and we built out that whole technology division. And since that time it's grown significantly. And now we have, and Geotech is our whole technology arm. So we continue to do the elder monitoring work. We work with families with kids on the autism waiver. We also work with businesses. We have in Geotech Business, which is access, facility access, and things of that sort. We have in Geotech Fleet, which is fleet management, and we primarily focus on working with assisted livings. And we most recently launched in Geotech Health, which is our remote patient monitoring platform. We, again, going back to this idea of filling gaps and helping people, those are like our two guiding principles, for lack of a better word, in how we have developed. So when you ask about where we see ourselves, I see that technology is just continuing to be a constant growth component of CMAG as we recognize that there are areas that technology can be beneficial, but also finding that balance of human interaction. So, we don't want to be just a tech company. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but we're not interested in being a tech company solely. We want to work with humans and see how technology can just make things even better. And so that's really been our focus and the direction that we're headed. We're actually going to be offering or launching our learning management system on the CMAG and Associates side within the next couple of months. We're super, super excited about that. Just recognizing the challenges that people are having, listening to our clients, listening to the community, and really aligning the work that we do to be prepared to help people as those changes are happening, whether it's in healthcare or in behavioral health. That's our focus as consultants. We're a full service consultant agency, but we really focus on behavioral health and healthcare organizations and in general. Now, we will work with everyone. We will work with that plumber. We worked with a landscaping company. We've worked with, oh gosh, a caterer, all kinds of different organizations. But I would say about 80 to 85% of the clients that we work with are behavioral health organizations or healthcare organizations.
I want to repeat something that you just said because I love it. We want to work with humans and just use technology to make it better. That is so needed in the world that we live in today because technology is just controlling everything if you let it.
100%. I mean, even just down to little things like when someone and Geotech Health is one of the few things that someone can simply buy online, right? And so even with that, if somebody buys a remote patient monitoring device just randomly online, we call them and welcome them to Geotech, and we have a conversation with them, and we make sure that they're clear on how the devices work, and let them know what they're going to be getting in the mail, and they have our contact information, and just continuing to add that human element. I think that that is just so important, especially since many of the people that we work with are elders.
Okay.
And so, technology is wonderful and lovely, but if you don't know how to use it, it just collects dust. I mean, how many people have those kinds of challenges? And sometimes I think we forget that people don't know how to use certain things. Like things just become so commonplace for us.
Very true.
And so, like, even down to when we were picking out the devices and designing out the system, making things super, super easy. So there's no pairing of devices, there's no Wi-Fi needed. Literally, you pop the batteries in and start using it. And that was super important. So the folks that we work with aren't, confused or struggling with, "Oh, now I have to pair stuff," or "I gotta call my daughter over so she can take care of that because I don't know how to do that stuff," and I get it, those things are real. And so we're very cognizant of those kinds of things and making sure that we really are that human voice at the other end of the phone that can answer questions and really be there for the people, whether it's someone using Ingia Tech services or one of our consulting firms or one of the businesses that we work with under the consulting firm. We always try to have that human element. And I think that's in some ways, I understand from an efficiency perspective why people have gotten away from that, but I think that's one of the things that makes us pretty cool because all of us here at CMAG believe in and love interacting with the people that we serve, and we make that a priority in how we provide services throughout the entire organization, no matter what we're doing.
It definitely shows. So CMAG has been very busy. What would you like the audience, or what would you like to leave the audience with?
So, something that I oftentimes, end, like, when I do public speaking and training, I end with a quote, and I jokingly always say that I believe my Heavenly Father gave it to me, and the reason I say that is because in addition to the quote that I'm gonna share with you, basically in 3rd grade, I was in Mrs. Scheck's 3rd grade class, and we had to write 2 poems that day. And I wrote one poem, and I always say that my Heavenly Father gave me the other one and had me memorize the one that I wrote so that it was always clear what Angie wrote versus what was given to me. So I'll tell you what I wrote first,
Okay.
and that is April showers help flowers, but they make people wet. That is completely a 8-year-old little poem, right?
Okay. Love it.
And so but the other one is use everything you have to do everything you do because everything you do is a chip off of you.
Mm.
And that has been my life's mantra. And I share that with people because I think sometimes we forget that we leave something with everyone we interact with. And that poem or quote, whatever you want to call it has morphed over the years. When I was really, really little, use everything you have to do everything you do because everything you do is a chip off of you. And it was really about my interactions with people. But then as I got older, trying to understand who I was and where I was going and things of that sort, this whole concept of use everything you have to do everything you do really stood out to me because it made me think through, well, what do I have? Like if this is telling me to use everything I have, what do I actually have? What do I have to give? And so that's what helped me really start thinking through that because I don't have like the traditional type of talents like, and this I guess manifestation of the quote chip um sort of happened when I was in high school because, I'm 6 feet tall and I'm not good at basketball, right? I got melanin in my skin and I can't dance, nor can I sing, right? My sister got all the artistic talent and the culinary talents all day long. She's a beast. Uh, like I'm not super great at academics. Like I'm just like, so what am I good at, right?
Mhm.
And one of the things I've always been good at is talking to people and speaking in front of hundreds of people. I'm one of those weird people that gets a high off of it. And I was like, okay, I like talking in front of people. It's fun. And I realized, oh, that's like a skill. That's a thing. That's a talent. And so from there, and then also embracing, that the diagnoses that I was given when I was a kid, really understanding that it just meant that I learned differently. And once I embraced that, I rocked and rolled through my bachelor's degree, my master's degree, my doctorate degree, and it's like because I just now understand how my brain works, right? And
Yes.
so use everything you have really became a thing for me. And so use everything you have to do everything you do, because everything you do is a chip off of you, really has been my everything. I have it. My first book was written about that. And it's just something that I think has been really powerful for me. And I love to share it because I don't feel like it's just mine. I think it was given to me to share with others. So, if I have parting words, that would be it.
I love that. And thank you for sharing that. Well, Dr. Angela Gustus, I appreciate your time, the lessons, the conversation that we had today.
Well, thank you. This has really been fun. I really appreciate your time and doing this together. This has been really, really awesome.
Thank you for listening. Join us next time for more Impact Innovations.